This is on Bill Maher's podcast, Club Random, and they're discussing late night hosts and late night writers. And I think Bill feels a little bit insecure that certain people. I think Seth Meyers said like he's going to cover his writers' strike stuff. I think Bill feels a little bit like he's been given the check um, on this, and he shows his true colors. What we're about to see is a very succinct lesson in how to divide and conquer labor. And the invocation of partisanship here has this as maybe one of the richest clips that I've seen in a long time. I really love the idea that you can be nonpartisan in capital versus labor. Like I think we talk about wanting to get past partisanship between left or red and blue, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what replaces that is the labor movement versus capital, as far as I'm concerned. So to say like, oh, everyone's just too. Anyway, I'll let Bill Maher elaborate himself here.
The strike is a perfect example. Those guys would never go back. This strike could go on till the 24th century. They would stay out. I feel for my.
Just a note, also, poor Jim Gaffigan.
Yeah,
who I don't think has bad politics. And I think he sticks up here, but he's also on Joe Rogan. I can't remember what Rogan was talking about, some bullshit too. And Jim's like, "Can I just get to my bits?"
I'm one of my writers, but there's a big other side to it, and a lot of people are being hurt besides them. A lot of people who don't make as much money as them in this bipartisan world we have, where you're just in one camp or the other. There's no in between. You're either for the strike, like they're fucking Che Guevara out there, like this is Cesar Chavez lettuce picking strike, or you're with Trump. Like there's no different. There's only two camps, and it's much more complicated than that.
So, because here's the thing about Bill Maher is that he's sort of seen as the pure liberal. I remember when I was young, and was a little bit more conservative leaning. Like Bill Maher was the epitome of a liberal, right? Particularly because he was anti-God and religion, right?
Right.
And it's so funny watching Bill Maher and his show. We talked about this because I hadn't watched in a long time. I obviously watched it when Danny Bessner was on the program, and I did not realize how ridiculous. I'd seen the clips and things on Twitter, but I didn't realize how lost he sort of is, right? Because liberalism is pretty weak, right, as a political philosophy, right? There's not a lot of things you hold on to. But Bill Maher has become so he's against young people and young movements. He's very much against the Black Lives Matter movement. Right, he thinks they've gone crazy, and all these kind of things. Just what is it that he's holding on to? I mean, so much of it is just not being Trump. Oh, Trump is a dumb guy, and I don't want to be a dumb guy. Is basically Bill Maher's politics. Truly, the probably one of the biggest victims of what you would call the Trump derangement syndrome is Bill Maher.
Right.
And so for him sitting here and seeing a labor struggle in his industry, right? He's well, if I'm against the labor struggle, then I'm basically like Trump. And that being the epitome of being a bad thing. I don't know. It's very revealing about his worldview at this point.
Yeah. And we should just plug for folks. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you remember this.
Sorry, Matt. Yeah. But just to put some meat on it, it's what he's saying is no, if you are against the writer's strike, you are for the record-breaking profits of the studios, of Netflix, of these corporations.
Right.
It's not about being for Trump. It's about being for those people. But he doesn't even have the ideological apparatus or ability to sort of see that. It's either you're a good liberal, right? So you support the strike, or you like Trump, right? Because not being a liberal means you support Trump. It's the only kind of conception of what that position could be for him.
Do you think he doesn't have the apparatus, or do you think he's concealing the apparatus? Because I will, we had this video here, maybe our number one viewed video. I don't know. On Left Reckoning, communism. Chris Hitchens versus Bill Maher and Dennis Prager, where Bill Maher lets his true feelings about the Vietnam War go, and I just think I remember that quote that was leaked to Variety from the producers that said, if we need to run this until people start losing their houses. I genuinely do not believe that Bill Maher would object to that statement in private.
No, he wouldn't. And I mean, it's one of those things you can never know somebody's like mind and heart, right? So is he just covering or not? But I think what he's sort of lamenting is that like Bill Maher's liberalism, right? And again, like I'm a socialist, it's not even my politics, right? But Bill Maher's liberalism is like, let's let the smart cosmopolitan people like run the country and not let the redneck rubes run the country. Like that's what it's Bush liberalism, right? It's like, oh, these kind of like these Southern boys are coming into politics and they're trying to run it, right? And that's what he's sort of always been against. So it is frankly like an elitism, right? At the end of the day. And not like, I mean, Bush obviously is an avatar, but it's just sort of like there's a style of speaking, there's a way of being that we want people in power to act like. And I'm going to sort of patrol that line and get people to sort of, wear a suit, talk a certain way, act a certain way in power. And that's what he wants.
Yeah.
That's why he's also so able to, sorry, Matt, that's why he's so capable of like cozying up with certain people on the right. Right. Like there are certain members of the Republican Party he's always going to hate, but the clean ones, right? The ones who talk a certain way, the ones who act a certain way, it's like, oh yeah, you guys make some good points. That's reasonable debate, friends, right? That's Bill Maher's politics.
Yeah, I mean, it is an absolute trip for me to imagine myself adopting that sort of position inside. Because, like, actually, what we're going to get to here is, he said that little thing about, oh, what about the poor, PAs and stage hands and stuff. And what undermines that is a little bit later, he says, actually, people should, it's a make or break business, is what he says here.
Correct me.
This picking strike, or you're with Trump. Like there's no different. There's only two camps, and it's much more complicated than that.
Oh, is it?
It is, but I do feel like there is a lot of the points, a lot of the grievances I kind of agree with.
Hell yeah, Jim.
I do understand that they're getting screwed a bit by the streamers, yes.
Screwed up. I mean, that is a bit of an understatement. Can we say? Screwed a bit by streamers. Those folks that Bill Maher like pretends he gives a shit about it in the preface to this diatribe. Guess what? If Aaron Paul ain't getting shit from Netflix for them streaming Breaking Bad, which is guess what? Where I streamed that.
Yeah.
Neither is that guy. Neither are those lower workers.
I mean, it's nice that I guess Bill Maher works for HBO or I guess Max now, right? Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. I wonder if he's part of the AMPTP. I should look that up.
I don't know. God, there's I know there's more in the clip, so I don't want to like spoil like our final reactions on it, but I will just say this. Bill Maher is doing something that is the only way that he's able to. I don't want to start picking enemies here, but what Bill Maher is able to do here is something that like is an opening that comes from progressivism, right? And I will just say this, as I said time and time again, like I am a socialist. I'm not a leftist. I'm not a progressive, right? I have a lot of common cause with those folks, but I have fundamental disagreements, and not just in like policy in the short term, in like the way that you view the world. And what Bill Maher is able to do, right, is a common kind of strategy in like a lot of progressive or leftists out there. Where it's like, oh, well, you're thinking about those people. Well, did you know there are other people who are worse off, right? And what you do then is you evacuate like class struggle, right? This is a complete opposite of the Sean Fain bit that we played at the beginning of the main show today. Where Sean Fain, he's talking about what the UAW is going through, but he's also talking about what other workers are going through. And I don't want to take away from Sean Fain's position, but if you're a UAW worker, you're 100% going to be better off than any other kind of minimum wage worker in this country. But Sean Fain says, hey, this is our struggle. This connects to your struggle, right? This is also for you too. And it's 100% the same thing in the writer strike. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't even want to give him what he's trying to take, right? Which is that, oh, these writers are super well paid, because the vast majority of people on the writer strike, and also the vast majority of actors who have been going on strike, are very much working class. If you want to use a non-Marxist definition of this stuff and just use income, right? People who make $40,000 a year, $50,000 a year. The vast majority of those memberships are people in that economic category, not the people who make $150,000, $200,000 a year, not to mention like the higher earners. The vast majority are people like us, people who have the same kind of struggles, who have the same kind of questions about their life, who have the same kind of lack of security. So the idea of even trying to utilize privilege discourse, saying like, oh, somebody making $45,000 in America is like a part of the elite. I mean, you have to either be extremely pessimistic about this project to talk about those people as elites, or just be flat out trying to obscure the reality of what these folks are doing. And what does this mean for all these other folks, right? We've had my good buddy Rob on the program to talk about what producers experience in the labor movement and in labor and producing television shows. Those guys get screwed. Those guys don't have security when it comes to the scheduling. They don't have security when it comes to their job and all those kind of things. Thankfully, a lot of those people are unionized, right? Unfortunately, there's a lot of people who aren't unionized in those jobs. What do you think a writer's strike does to somebody who's a member of a union who is a lighting person or a production assistant, right? Do you think that hurts them, that the writers are asking for more, or do you think that that helps them? It helps them because it helps these companies realize, oh shit, there are a bunch of people who make this thing work. It's not just numbers on a spreadsheet. It's actual physical people and real labor that's going on. And those people demanding more helps everybody out. So this kind of like zero-sum game that Bill Maher saying, like, oh, if the writers get their demands, then that means that, oh, the production assistants won't. Or that means the lighting guys won't, or the sound guys won't, or the caterers won't, or whatever, right? It's just ludicrous. And it's is a classic attempt to try to divide the working people against each other. Right. Say, oh, they do this in every circumstance, in any industry. It doesn't matter. I think that the writer strike and the stuff that's going on in media right now, Matt, has really revealed a lot of fair weather folks when it comes to the labor movement, right? Because, we're Americans, right? We can admit that, Matt. So the movie industry, television industry, it's got a little glitz and glamour to it. We're like, those guys are like living the life. No, a lot of people aren't. A lot of them are, and that's why they're on strike.
Absolutely.
Screwed a bit by the streamers, yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's a change, and you either, it's like anything that is, I believe in free market, but I also believe in trust and then verify, right?
What does that mean?
Meaning, you don't trust. There? Like the reason, Zaslav made $400 million. And I think they're looking for 80 million for, it's like they're gonna, you leave a kid in front of a bowl of marshmallows, they're gonna eat the marshmallows. It's not like some grand thing.
Well, I don't know. What are you saying? They're only asking for $80 million?
Well, I'm saying
they're asking for a lot of things.
They're asking for a lot of things.
Like kooky. Like what I find objectionable about the philosophy of the strike, it seems to be they have really morphed a long way from 2007 strike, where they kind of believe that you're owed a living as a writer, and you're not. This is show business. This is a make or miss league, and not everybody.
You don't think that that streamers should reveal numbers so that they can?
Oh, maybe things? Sure.
Right, of course. I mean, that's a ridiculous thing, and like that.
That's such a good point by Jim.
It's so wild to be like, oh yeah, these people think they should like be able to like have some stability, and that's very entitled. As Gafka pointed out, these on the other end is billionaires, and also kind of keying into what we talked about with the Cruise self-driving cars thing, investors. Netflix has billions of dollars. Maybe I don't want to state exactly how much, but lots of billions of dollars of debt, because that is from a bank saying, hey, come get this money for us. We're going to let you grow and expand and take over this entire thing and make all these silly bets about what the future of entertainment is going to look like. But guess what? The bill is going to come due. And you're not going to be able to like send that cash to Aaron Paul or any of those other lower level people that Bill Maher says he cares about, because we have this debt to pay. And that's it's fundamentally perverted our entire, not only technology, but our entire entertainment structure. And it is, there's no nuance here. You are on the side of the writers and the workers making the demand, and not the side of capital accruing interest.
I should have prepped it. I don't have it. But Adam Conover, who has been really great at sort of doing a lot of media appearances and advocating for the writers on strike. For people who don't know him, he ran a show, Adam Ruins Everything, who multiple time guest of the show, Natalie Sher, was a writer on for a while. He made this like great point about like the streaming system, and it gets at the heart of not just what's going on here, but what's going on in capitalism. What he says here is that like Netflix made a kind of promise to the consumer, was that for $15 a month, you get access to every show and every movie that's ever existed, right? So you can cut the cord. And then he also makes this really great point. He's like, cutting the cord is also a stupid idea because all of the goddamn companies that run cable also run the internet, right? So, oh my God, think of how much your internet bill has gone up in the past 10 years. I mean, internet bills are like used to be, cheaper. Now it's like $80-$90 a month for internet for most people, right? So you're not cutting the cord. You're still paying a bill to somebody. And now you also have on top of it, you got to get Peacock and you got to get Netflix and Max and all these other kind of things. So you're not really breaking out of that kind of system. And what it ended up, and they also weren't able to deliver, right? Netflix doesn't have every show. None of these streaming services do. Instead, you actually have like this really bizarre Byzantine kind of system where now you have to pay for 6, 7, 8. If you don't have cable, you have to pay for 8, 9 streaming services to be able to watch shows and things like that. So it's not worked out for the consumer, and it's not worked out. And the thing is that like what it ended up doing is like, just like Uber, just like all these other things, did it invent something new? I mean, yes, I guess in the sense of like streaming, right? But in your actual experience as a consumer, did it lift you from having to pay a bunch of money to these kind of companies? No, you're now paying relatively, if not more, to those kind of companies. And because they innovated, now they're not paying their workers anymore, right, in the same way that they had to do on cable.
Same as Uber.
So very classic kind of capitalist innovation, right? Did we innovate? Like, Uber was an app, right? It was on your phone, but it was taxi service, right? Well, what did they do? They moved past a lot of regulations that we have on the taxi industry, got out of that industry, and put more and more people in more precarious situations who do that labor. Same thing with television. Did they innovate something? Yes, you can watch something on your phone or on your iPad. But did it change the game? No. And what did it mean for the people who work in the industry? Oh, well, this is a new industry. Streaming is different than traditional cable. We can't pay you guys the same royalties that we did on network TV or on cable. Yeah. So you don't get
that. And it ain't because we're paying the little guys more.
Yeah, it's not because we're saving money for the consumers either, right?
Right.
And,
exactly.
It's the most classic story in this weird system that we've been living in since the 2010s, where it's like, oh my God, the entire industry has been upended and innovated. No, the innovation is paying workers less and giving you a shittier service. That's it.
And let's just see the impact of Bill Maher here. Bill Maher criticizes WGA strike, calls demands kooky. Ooh. And I just, apropos of other stuff going on, like I have no respect for people who want to say like I actually like balanced it out with nuance at a different part. You have to know what fucking time it is. And you say stuff like this, guess what? The media out there is ready to put this in a headline. Bill Maher criticizes WGA strike, calls demands kooky. Now this is editors love this sort of thing because they, especially like the ones that are pro producers, which I would say are probably a lot of the big entertainment sort of weekly type of things. They get a headline like this and they can emphasize, okay, this guy who's a liberal, as everybody famously knows, because people say that all the time, he wants he called the writers' demands kooky, and so that's what's going to be. Bill Maher slams screenwriters kooky strike demands, and again, like, unless you're Daily Kos, you're not going to foreground like that this is a problem. It's going to be neutral. Bill Maher doesn't think his writers are owed a living, that one says. But yeah,
that's a good flip.
So exactly. And so it's like, that is the work you did. I'm glad you got to like bullshit about Jim Gaffigan and not make him laugh a single fucking time in that clip anyway. and bitch about shit, because that's all Club Random is just like that old guy yelling at a cloud, as somebody said in the comments already. But look, you have picked a side, and I'm sorry if that makes me a bipartisan or a partisan, but I will confess,
Do you think he's like Trump?
I feel partisanly towards writers unions. I feel partisan towards them against the fucking money men. I just do.
It's one of the easiest things in the world, friends. If a union goes on strike,
Yeah,
you support them. It's like one of the least nuanced things you ever have to do.
If we had proper public education, that would be a kindergarten lesson.
Kooky. It's super kooky to say, hey, you guys are making hundreds of millions of dollars. We should see some of that for the thing. Is Bob Iger writing the shows? I don't even know who the Netflix CEO. Like, are these people doing? No, they're not. Right? They're just sitting on something that other people are doing, making a lot of money for it. It's kooky to say, hey, the people who create value should get paid for it.
Look at me being kooky. We're being proletarianized in like under a generation. Look at me being a kook. Yeah,
and that's a whole other thing too. I mean, another example is like journalism, man. I mean, journalism is a nightmare. Yeah. People who are working journalists, how hard it is, right? And I'll say this to somebody who like does this program. In addition to writing, like I want nothing more than to just be like a writer doing something. You can't do it, right? You have to figure out like multiple ways to survive and to put stuff out there because there's no money in it. And what ends up happening is a significant amount of people who are working in journalism end up being wealthy, well-connected folks who, it doesn't matter if you see a pay cut because you're safe.
Totally.
Right? And that changes the way that you report on union drives and fights and strikes.
Absolutely.
It's all part of this thing.
There was the famous thing like in comedy where all the fucking writers went to Harvard and people were like sick of it, right? And it's like, yes, that's exactly the case. And we should respond directly to the thing about like writers don't think they should deserve a living. The actual solution to this is one like can only be one with the labor movement, but I think can be delivered by the federal government, which is to decommodify essentials. Single payer Medicare for all will do so much more to unleash the creativity of these folks. And then guess what? Those unions, whether it's a journalist union, whether it's video game workers who might go on strike too, whether it's whoever, whether it's plumbers, if you don't have to worry about your healthcare, all of a sudden you can start going after more of that capital.
100%. I mean, that's why. Yeah, no. I mean, that's the whole argument for these kind of what we'd call non-reformist reforms, right? Not to get technical or philosophical about these things. It's like, you get these people who we might get to in a second who are like, oh my God, well, why are these people who call themselves socialists so like trying to, for example, in America, try to create like a European healthcare system? They don't have socialism in Europe, right? Does this lead to it? No, it doesn't. It doesn't. If anyone's saying that it does, they're wrong. But what does it do? It allows you to focus your fights on things that aren't healthcare, and rather the pay disparity, the way that companies are structured. And doesn't mean that in France or in Germany that they're closer. But Lord help us all. It is very true that one of the things that gets brought up time and time again by people working in industries, whether they're unionized or not, is how much they're having to pay for their healthcare. And it is a huge hurdle for people to have to jump over. And one of the sickest things in the world to think that like you can die of preventable diseases. I mean, go back to what we were talking about earlier, Matt, with like all the innovations in science and technology, the ability of like medical science to be able to help people live longer, to live healthy, not just to live longer, but to live like healthier lives, right? Where you're not sort of addled with, a health issue or something like that, something that's preventable. It's incredible, the stuff that we've been able to do in the past 40, 50 years. But who does that go to? It goes to the super rich. It goes to the wealthy and the well-connected. It doesn't go to us. And we should all be at the barricades demanding, hey, that medical attention that people like Bill Gates, people like Elon Musk get, should be something that we should all be able to get because we have the technology, we have the capacity, we have the knowledge to do that. Why are you not getting that? Like I'm just saying, like even going beyond the question of cost, right? Which is like an easy thing to bulldoze over. We should we should not be living in a country right now in the United States of America, a country that, yeah, we have our own history riddled with issues, but a country that has tremendously advanced in medical science, right? There's just no doubt about that. A country that has tremendously advanced in medical science and the life expectancy is going down. That's fucked. That means there's something fucked with the system, not with technology, which is why I'm a tech booster in the sense of like, hey, let's use things for the good of people. But I'm not somebody who says like technology is going to save us all, because you can have the technology and things can still literally get worse, even though we might be able to prevent and treat more and more diseases and health issues that people face. The fact that people are dying younger and younger, that's insane. That's ridiculous. And you should never allow yourself to become so jaded and sort of pummeled by the news cycle that you forget how ridiculous it is in a country that we literally have like a weight loss drugs in this country right now, and people are still dying of preventable diseases. I mean, this is ridiculous.